Okay, and I think we should be live streaming now. Let's see. Okay, so welcome everybody. Today we're going to talk a little bit about FAFSA and completing the FAFSA itself. My name is Abel Montoya, and with me today we have Robin Coates. So Robin, I don't know if you want to say a few words about yourself.
I am Robin Coates here with ISAC, the Illinois Student Assistance Commission in the Kennedy King District. I am a near peer mentor here to help high school and college students with the financial aid process and honestly the college going process overall.
Okay, very good. And I'm just trying to make sure that that we get to see the actual questions. Let's see here. Mhm. Okay. All right. So we're on, and it's just a little bit time delay. Okay. So one of the things with the FAFSA is that some people get a little bit apprehensive about how to complete this form. It's a little bit complicated. It can be a little bit daunting at times. And hopefully today we'll be able to put people's minds at ease a little bit about how it works, and then also give us some tips as to how you can best complete the form itself. Now, the FAFSA is a form that's used to determine the eligibility of a student for financial aid for college. So we're talking information that's used to determine the eligibility for federal money, so like the Department of Education, and also state money. Okay, in this case, the state of Illinois, if a student were to say, for example, participate or attend a college in the state of Illinois. The form itself has a lot of questions. Okay, there's technically over 100 questions on the form itself. But one of the things that you'll encounter if you're doing this for the very first time is that there's something called skip legend. So based on how you answer a question, subsequent questions won't appear based on that question that you how you answered that. Okay. And I'm just checking real quickly here the actual Facebook page to see if we have any questions yet, but it doesn't seem like we have any just yet. Um, with the with the form itself, it starts out pretty basic. It's asked for the student's name and social security number. But believe it or not, that's probably where people make the most mistakes in that they entered the social security number incorrectly. They transpose numbers or they kind of guess. This is one of the things you don't want to do. You don't want to guess on the social security number. So you want to double check it. You want to triple check the social security number. And then the other thing too is the name. Some people use nicknames on the FAFSA, and that causes problems because what happens is the form itself, it double checks with what's with the Social Security Administration. So it looks at that name and the Social Security number to make sure it matches what the Social Security Administration has on file. So it's really important that the student enter their name the way it appears on the Social Security card. Okay. Now, sometimes I've actually seen parents who try to start a FAFSA for their kid, and they enter their name and their Social Security number. But you know what happens then? That they're applying, the parent is applying for financial aid, not the student. So parents, be careful about that. Okay, make sure that you enter the student information where it says student and the parent information where it says parent. With the name itself, sometimes some people have hyphenated names or names that are pretty long. You want to enter as much as you can without abbreviating. Okay, and if your name has a hyphen and the hyphen appears on the Social Security card, make sure that you enter the hyphen in there too. Okay. Um, when the form is started, the student can either use their FSA-ID, which is an electronic signature to begin the form, and if you do that, a lot of that information will be pre-populated. Okay. Now, for the parents too, if they don't, they can actually start a FAFSA on behalf of the student too, using their student's name and social security number. Okay. So those are that's we're just talking question number one and number two. And that could be, that could be an issue for some students. Now, with the form itself, there's going to be a number of things that you want to keep in mind. All right. With the form, when the students submit it, it gets sent out to the Department of Education, and the Department of Education looks at their information and then sends a summary to the student of what they calculated is the ability of the family to pay for college. The other thing too is that form is going to ask the student, list the colleges that you're interested in receiving this information. You can list up to 10. And then this form, the Department of Ed will send that information to those 10 colleges. If say you had 10 colleges or 2 or 3, depending on how many you list. And then they review that information to help determine what is the ability of the student to get financial aid. Now, some kids I know are interested in applying to more than 10 colleges. And I don't know, Robin, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to work with students who are interested in applying more than 10 colleges.
I actually had a student this morning who we talked about that, and I said, I have to be honest, I don't recommend that you apply to more than 10. Specifically because different schools have different requirements. So if one school may say, hey, we need 3 letters of rec, and then another school may say we only need 1, but if you have 10 schools, you can, really overwhelm yourself. And like I told the student this morning, 2020 has already been overwhelming enough for us, all of us. So let's not complicate things. Let's only apply to schools that we really want to go to and that's really a good fit for us financially, academically, and socially. Let's not choose schools just because they got something in the mail or our friends are going there or it sounds cool, but let's be intentional about the schools that we're applying to. And so he was like, well, maybe I shouldn't apply to 10. I was like, I don't think so. So that's why we're having this conversation, so that you don't waste your time and you don't become more overwhelmed than you already are. So no 10 schools. 10 schools is enough. Let's not take more than 10.
Now, if a family says, well, Robin, I actually do want to apply to at least 12 schools. All right. So what happens is in the form itself, you can only list 10. Okay. So when you list the 10 and the form is submitted, it takes about 2 to 3 business days if the student and the parents sign the form electronically. So once it's processed, so after talking about after 3 days or so, the student go back in there and say they want to send information to 12 schools. They take out school number 9 and number 10 and put in number 11 and number 12, and then re-sign it and resubmit it. So now colleges number 11 and 12 have the information. Now, the one thing that families need to keep in mind is that if for whatever reason they decide to make changes to the FAFSA, the schools that were taken out will not get those updates. So kind of keep that in mind. One of the other questions that people have questions about, a little confused, is about the work study question. So on the work study question, it says, do you wish to be considered for work study? Yes, no, or don't know. All right. Now, if someone says no or don't know, they're not going to be offered work study, because there's a lot of kids that want work study and they're going to take up all the spots. Okay. Now, people say, well, what is exactly work study? How is that different from a campus job? Well, they're both jobs. Okay. That's it. They're both jobs. Student applies for them, they get them, and they work and they get paid. Say they get paid $10 an hour, whether it's a work study or other campus job, it's $10 an hour. All right. Now, behind the scenes, what happens is that of that $10 per hour salary, $250 is from the college and $750 comes from federal money or federal dollars. So that's why it's cheaper for some colleges to offer work study positions, because it's cheaper for their departments. It's cheaper on their budget. Okay. So I always tell students, say yes to that question, because what happens is you maybe get offered work study and you can say, yes, I always to accept the work study, but you don't actually have to get a job if whatever reason you don't want to, okay? Because you still have to go and apply and get hired. But it's a benefit, because the other thing too to work study is that students, the departments know that students are students. So that means they'll have exams, they'll have papers, so they'll be flexible with the schedule. Work study positions usually have a limit on how many hours you work, usually no more than 20. Every once in a while, we have students that says, I want to go work full time and go to college full time. That's really, really dangerous in regards to their academics. It doesn't work well for for them in the long run. So working part time is a good thing. Now with work study too is, say it doesn't count against you when the FAFSA calculates the ability to pay for college. So for example, if say you had a summer job, right? You made $6,000 over the summer, and then your freshman year in college, you had a work study job and made $2,000. Okay, so you filled your tax return out, you had $8,000 worth of income. And the FAFSA is going to ask you how much money did you make from working. So say you put the $2,000. So now that $8,000 is lowered by $2,000. So they only look at $6,000 when they're looking at the ability of the family to pay for college. So that's one of the other benefits of work study is it doesn't count against you when you're being considered for financial aid. Now, Robin, I don't know. Did you have a work study job when you're on campus?
I did. I loved my work study job. I got to work in the advising office. But like you said, I had those perks of being able to go home for breaks, and not, having to work Black Friday or be, demanded to stay on campus or stay in the area. In addition to having my final schedule, my manager or my supervisor would create our final schedule based on the finals that we had. So if I had a final on Wednesday and I typically worked on Wednesdays, I just wouldn't work on Wednesdays. So it worked out for me. And also, because it was the advising office, it was quiet. It was a great place to study and get papers done. Being an English major, I really used that to my advantage. I did a lot of homework on the job, but as long as I got my work done first. But that's one nice thing, just being in the campus atmosphere, not having to do papers or homework in the break room at the local Walmart, being kind of on campus, still having that feel, it made it feel very natural and very organic to be doing homework on the job. So I definitely recommend a campus, a work study job, just simply because, although you don't make a lot of money, you still get to go home. You still get to get off at 4:30 when the campus closes and kick it with your friends. And also just, having the flexibility. So I take a little less pay for all those perks.
Yeah, that sounds great. And the other thing too is if a student if it gets offered work study and they actually don't get a job their first year on campus, there's a possibility that the following year the college may not offer work study to that student because they said, we had these other people that were interested, but we couldn't offer them work study, so we're actually going to offer the work study money to someone else. So just keep that in mind. One of the other questions that we get is about selective service. Some people get confused and they think, oh, is this registering for enlisting in the military? And I want to disabuse people of that notion. It is not. The U.S. does not have a compulsory military service. It's all volunteer army. But there's something called selective service, which is a federal law that says that all the males between the ages of 18 and I believe 26 have to register for selective service. And once you turn 18, if you're not registered for selective service, you cannot get any federal financial aid. So that's why for students who are 18, there's going to be a question. Do you wish to for us to register for selective service? I would say just click yes. And then when you turn 18, you'll be registered automatically via the FAFSA itself, okay? This question is skipped for individuals who indicate that they're female, right? Now, for students who are transgender and were born male or had designation of male at birth, who do not register for selective service, they wouldn't be eligible for federal aid, but they could potentially apply for state aid through our alternative application for only financial aid. And we're going to do another presentation on that application later on in this month of October. Since today is October 1 and the FAFSA opens up October 1, we thought we'd kick it off with the FAFSA itself. But with the question about military service, selective service, understand that it's not enlisting in the military. It's just saying that if you're 18 and register, the FAFSA can register you, and even if you're not 18, the FAFSA will be able to register you once you turn 18. Otherwise, you won't be considered or you won't receive any federal financial aid. Right now, the thing that people get confused about with the FAFSA is indicating their grade level. Okay, it says what year will you be when you start college, and I'm paraphrasing here. And some people say, well, I took dual credit, I did concurrent enrollment. Does that mean, I'm already a first year college student? No, it's basically asking you, were you a degree seeking college student at any point? And for everyone that's in high school, you're going to say, no, never attended. Okay. And the other thing is sometimes people will say that they're a graduate student because they graduated from high school, but they're asking about graduate student from college. So make sure you don't say that you're a graduate student, okay? Because otherwise you won't get any grants because the Pell Grant is only for individuals that are going to be at the undergraduate level, So those are some of the most common questions on which people get tripped up in the student section. Now, with the parents section, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated sometimes. And I know Robin and I have worked with lots and lots of parents, and it's they have all kinds of interesting situations. One of the first things is, who's the parent for purposes of FAFSA, or whose parental information is reported? The answer is the parent with whom the student lives the most in the last 12 months if the parents are divorced or separated. Okay? If they're together, then it's both of those parents. If they're together, and whether they're married or not married, it's still both of them. Okay? But when they're separated, it's the parent with whom they live the longest in the last 12 months. And a parent is someone who's a biological adoptive parent or step parent. Okay, that's it. No one else. And even though we say, legal guardians are not parents for purposes of the FAFSA, we still get that question. Do I have to report my information if I'm a legal guardian? The answer is no, no, no. I know I get that tons of times. Now, with the other piece with the parent section is that we have to remember that the student is the one that's going to college, so it's all about student eligibility. So if the parent social security number, you enter all zeros. Okay. So it's all about the student, not the parent, right? Now, if the parent has an ITIN, which is individual taxpayer identification number that starts with the number 9, you do not use that on the FAFSA. Okay, I've seen that error a number of times where they don't enter all zeros or they enter their ITIN, and that it causes all kinds of confusion when it comes to the FAFSA. Sometimes people will say, "Hey, Abel, we lost our job, or we got notice that we're going to be laid off. How can we let the colleges know?" Well, there's a question in the FAFSA that says, "Are you a dislocated worker?" Make sure you say yes to that if you lost your job or were given notice that you're going to be laid off. That's someone who's basically, not basically, but there's a number of criteria that fall under that category. Someone that's receiving unemployment benefits, was self-employed but is now unemployed, was the spouse of someone on whom they depended, and they're no longer being supported by the individual, so they're a displaced homemaker. And then so there's a few other categories. And one of the things you'll see with the FAFSA is that when you're on a question, right on the right hand side it says this is the pertinent information to how to answer the question. So many times you don't even have to call it. Well, you can call us anytime you want. But you don't have to call us all the time because the answer is right there for you. And sometimes we just point that out. Case in point is when they're asking about income and assets, they'll tell you if they're asking for something on the tax return, it tells you exactly what line and where it can be found so you can report that information. Now, speaking of assets, another mistake that I've seen happen quite a bit is that parents report information that they should not report on the FAFSA. There's 3 things that you don't report as a parent or as a student either on the FAFSA. Number 1, your primary residence. Okay, the home in which you live is not considered an asset for purposes of the FAFSA. Now, if you have a second home, like a rental property, you will report that the equity in that rental property. And what you do is you take the value, subtract, and that's the net worth, and that's what you report as an asset. But the home in which you live, you do not report it. The other one that really inflates the EFC of families is when they report their retirement plans. Do not report the value of retirement plans. Let me repeat that. Do not report the value of your retirement plans. So we're talking your 401ks, your IRAs, your pension plans. Don't report those because those are for the parents for their retirement, not to be considered for purposes of paying for their child's education. And then the third thing that you do not report in the FAFSA as an asset is the family-owned business if it has less than 100 full-time employees. Okay, you don't report that. Those are the things that the FAFSA says we don't want to consider that when we try to calculate the ability of the family to pay for college. Now, Robin, I don't know if you've had situations where parents have inadvertently reported the value of the retirement plans or the home. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yes, I've only worked with a few families who have done such, but they would say, for instance, they completed the FAFSA without me being there or on their own, and they just, they went ahead and did that. But we definitely did make changes to the application so that it didn't reflect such. But there's a drastic change when you include the information and when you exclude the information. And so that's why it's important to exclude it, because you don't want to, be embarking upon this journey and really, not getting the accurate amount. So that's definitely something important to note for sure.
Yeah, and for me, the telltale sign is when I see a really high EFC and the income is pretty low. Okay, because one of the biggest drivers of determining the ability of the family to pay for college is the income. Okay, and if I see the income is low and the EFC is really high, I'm like, what's going on here? And usually then I see a really big number in the assets, and then I ask those questions like, oh yeah, I did report my 401k. No, you got to take that out. If someone reports, go back into the FAFSA and make a correction because that was an error. So there's a difference between an error and just changing stuff, okay? When you make an error, you need to go in there and correct it. But you can't go in there and say, well, when I did my FAFSA, I had $4,000 in the bank and now I have 3,500. Can I go and update? No, because the FAFSA is a snapshot of the income and assets that you have at the time that you filled out the FAFSA. At that moment, it's looking at the money coming into the household and the money leaving the household, along with the assets that the family may have. Now, with that being said, the families are going to be asked income information and tax information. And when those questions come up, as I mentioned earlier, it'll tell you exactly where to find that information. They'll say, what's your adjusted gross income of the student if they file a tax return, and of the parents, assuming they filed a tax return. Now, with that, that's all the taxable income, okay? So they may ask for additional stuff and other questions. Now, some people say, well, I didn't file a tax return. Do I still have to report the money I earned from working? The answer is yes. If you didn't file a tax return because you didn't make that much money or there was other very specific reasons why you didn't file, you would say did not file. And then the next question says, how much did you make from working? And this applies to the student and to the parent. So you have to indicate there how much was made. Now, for some parents, they say, hey, I can't file a tax return because I don't have a social security number. Go to your tax preparer, have them get the individual taxpayer identification number so you can file your tax return. Another mistake that I've seen sometimes parents make is when the parents are married and they live in the same household and they file as head of household. That you can't do that because to be a head of household, you can't be married. So that's number one. And number two, you have to support more than half, provide more than half of the financial support for the household. Two people in the same household can't provide more than half each one of them. All right, so that it causes problems, but that's okay. You can go back and amend and get it fixed. Okay, so don't be scared if you made a mistake with the way the taxes were filed, but you can go back and amend it. You just got to work with a tax expert or tax preparer. Now, when it comes to reporting income, the FAFSA uses something called prior tax year. Okay, and so for the student, when they fill out their FAFSA, oh, and the other thing too is you fill out the FAFSA for the year that you will be in college. So, for example, students who are seniors now, who are going to graduate in May of 2021, they're going to fill out the FAFSA for the 2021-2022 year. And the prior income year would be 2019, so this past tax cycle. Okay, so there you report the income and money earned during that time in 2019, and that's always going to be the case. Okay, and the FAFSA always becomes available after October 1st. So the other thing too, I tell families, well, you don't necessarily have to get it done October 1st. I tell them get it done, like in my opinion, before Thanksgiving, because you want to avoid the holidays, and you get let me rephrase it. You get distracted with the holidays. You get distracted with Christmas and New Year's. Before you know it, in the middle of January, the state money will run out. The federal money, there's plenty of it, but the state money will run out. Last year we ran out on July 1st. There's still quite a bit of time. But the other thing too is you got to remember, if you're applying early to a college, they can't send you an award letter until you sent their financial aid information. So if some colleges have an earlier deadline and they've already admitted you, they're just waiting for your financial aid information. And also, you don't have to be admitted to a college to list them on the FAFSA. Because if you list 10 colleges and you haven't applied to them yet, that's not a problem. They'll just hold the information and wait until they actually get your admission application and to actually admit it. And then they pull the FAFSA information, work up the award letter, and mail it to the student, or in some cases, give it to the student via their college portal. So that's the way of the process in regards to how we're to get an award letter. So get it done in the next month or two. All right. You don't have to have applied to the colleges that you list, but it's you want to list them there. I don't know, Robin. Do you have any other insight or points you want to make on that piece?
I like to say, when students are applying to schools after they submitted their financial aid, their FAFSA, I like to say they're best friends. The FAFSA and the college, they're best friends. They work together. They go out together. They hang on the weekends together. And so when you do your application, they contact their best friend. They say, hey, did you talk to this person? Do you have their information on file? And they just do a little switch off, a little transfer, and then that's how you get your award letter. But you can't do one without the other. Okay. So twins, best friends, however you want to, take it. However, you have to have that financial aid application on file before the college can actually see it, right? And the college will not send you an award letter unless they have that on file from the financial aid office. So take that, friends, twins, whatever you can't have one without the other. Okay. I like to let students know that so that they don't forget to do both pieces. You can't do one without the other. It's super important to make sure we get both done.
Yeah. And speaking of parents and their students, as we've been talking for the last almost half hour, if you're one of those fortunate parents that has multiple kids in college at the same time, say you got twins, remember that each student does their own FAFSA. And then as a parent, you use your FSA to sign each one of the FAFSAs, okay? Even if a student's supplying parental information of two parents, only one parent needs to sign. So keep that in mind. Now, if you do, for example, have twins, when you fill out the FAFSA for the first person, when you get to the end, you get a confirmation page. On that top paragraph, that confirmation page, it says, do you have another student or another individual in your household for whom you're providing information on the FAFSA? You can click on the link, and then all the parental information from that FAFSA gets transferred over to the new FAFSA for the other person. But you only get that chance right there at that moment. And if you close it off, you won't get that opportunity again. Then you just have to re-enter everything. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind. Last thing that I think I'm going to touch upon is that you have to do the form every year. Okay, because they're looking at the income and assets of student here. And they also ask how many kids are in college, so things can change. You can make more money, make less money. You can have more kids in college. A lot of things can change. Now, speaking of change, if for whatever reason, say 2020 has been difficult, for example, the pandemic, if it adversely affected your economic situation, which has a lot of people, and it's not and 2019 is not indicative of what 2020 is going to look income-wise, talk to the college, let them know, communicate with them, let them know your situation, and they will work with you. They will work with you to see if there's anything that they can do to help with that award letter. The key thing is communication. And then always, know where you can get help. Talk to your high school counselor, talk to the financial aid office at the college, or talk to us. You can always get in contact with a core member by going to our website. We have a student portal. It's studentportal.isac.org/ISAC core. That's ISACORPS. You can go there, you enter your zip code, and then the people that are in your area, the core members, their picture will come up along with their email and their phone numbers. You can get in contact with people like Robin, okay? Because ultimately we're here to help. So we're out of time, and hopefully this information will help you fill out the FAFSA, feel a little more comfortable with it. And if there's ever anything that we can do to help, please don't hesitate to contact us. So Robin, I don't know if you have a few last words to say before we sign off.
Just in regards to your taxes, and COVID-19, there are a lot of schools that are doing COVID-19 grants right now. For this current school year and for the past school year, so even over the summer. So if you were impacted by the pandemic, if you need additional assistance, schools have additional applications and resources for students who may need that. So definitely take advantage of that. And then holistically, like Abel said, we're here for you guys. So if there's anything that you need, feel free to reach out to us. Today's been a eventful day, but it's also been very rewarding because I know that I'm helping students, and we're kind of getting through this together.
Very good. Well, thank you, everyone. Hope everyone has a good night. They stay safe, and we're here for you. Thank you, and have a great night.